Hey everyone, and welcome to CompStat Daily. I'm Kim. This is a channel where we go beyond headlines to examine the facts, the statistics, and the stories behind crime in America. Our goal is simple: to separate myth from reality using reliable data and credible research. If you enjoy fact-based crime analysis, please follow, subscribe, and join me each week as we break down the numbers. So let's get started. Now, every day we are surrounded by crime statistics, and we hear that crime is up, crime is down, one city is safer than another. A new report claims that violent crime has fallen, while another headline suggests people feel less safe than ever before. And these numbers influence elections, public safety, and public policy, police staffing, business investments, and even where families choose to live, work, and play. But here's the question: how much confidence should we place in those numbers? Today, we're beginning a new series. We're going to begin looking at cities across the country and question those numbers by taking a closer look at one city today that often finds itself at the center of the national conversation, and that's New York City. Now, this episode is not about proving that New York City's crime statistics are either accurate or inaccurate. It's about understanding how those numbers are created, why they've been questioned over the years, and what the available evidence shows. Throughout this episode, I'll distinguish between documented facts, public allegations, and the findings of independent reviews. My goal isn't to tell you what to believe, is to give you the information you need to make your informed decision. Now, we need to look closely at crime statistics. Crime statistics matter because they shape the real world decisions, like police departments use them to identify crime trends and deploy officers. Government agencies use them when making funding decisions, and researchers use them to study crime over time. And the public uses them to judge whether their communities are becoming safer or more dangerous. If those numbers are misunderstood, or if people lose confidence in them, it can affect public trust. That's why understanding how crime statistics work is just as important as knowing what the numbers say. Now, we need to look at what we're going to cover today. Here's where we're going. First, we're going to follow the path of a crime report from the moment it's reported to the point where it becomes part of the official statistics. Next, we'll examine why some people have questioned New York City's crime numbers over the years. And then we'll look at what independent investigations and oversight reviews actually found, and just as importantly, what they did not find. And finally, we'll bring everything together and discuss what crime statistics can tell us and what they can't tell us, and why looking at multiple sources of information gives us the clearest picture of public safety. So let's begin with the foundation of every crime statistic. Where does that number actually come from? Before we can decide whether crime statistics are trustworthy, we first need to understand where they come from. Many people assume that every crime committed automatically becomes part of the official crime stats, but that's not how the system works. Every crime statistic begins with a single event. Someone may call 911, a victim walks into a police precinct, or an officer may personally witness a crime. And once police become aware of an incident, officers respond, gather information, interview victims and witnesses, and begin documenting what happened. And based on the evidence available at the time, an initial police report is prepared. That report becomes the starting point for everything that follows. But it's important to remember that an initial report is exactly that. It's initial. As investigators collect more evidence, the understanding of what happened can change. Now, classification matters. Once the report is completed, investigators will determine how the incident should be classified under the law. And that classification is important because it determines how the crime will be counted in the official statistics. So, for example, investigators must determine whether an incident legally meets the definition of robbery, burglary, larceny, felony assault, or another offense. And those legal definitions matter. Two incidents may appear similar at first, but after investigators review surveillance video, interview witnesses, or collect additional evidence, they may determine that a different criminal offense occurred. When that happens, the classification may be updated. That doesn't automatically mean someone manipulated the statistics. It may simply mean the investigation produced new information. Now, one of the most important things to remember is that criminal investigations are designed to follow the evidence, even if that evidence changes the original report. After reports are reviewed and entered into the department's record system, they're used in several different ways. Police supervisors analyze local crime trends to decide where officers should be deployed. City officials will use the information to help allocated resources and evaluate public safety initiatives. Many agencies also submit crime data to the FBI's initial reporting program, allowing researchers and policymakers to compare crime trends across the country. Now, by this point, the individual report has become part of a much larger statistical picture. But here's something important to keep in mind. Official crime statistics only measure crimes that enter the reporting system. If a crime is never reported, law enforcement has no opportunity to investigate it, classify it, or include it in the official numbers. So that's one of the reasons why crime statistics, while extremely valuable, don't always tell the complete story. Understanding that limitation is essential before we ask whether the numbers accurately reflect what's happening in a community. So why have people questioned New York City crime statistics? Now that we understand how crime statistics are created, let's answer the question that brought many of you here today. Why have some people questioned New York's crime statistics? To answer that, we must go back to the mid-1990s. So in 1994, the New York Police Department introduced a management system called CompStat. That's short for computer statistics. CompStat changed policing across America. So instead of waiting months to analyze crime trends, commanders reviewed crime data every week. They identified crime hotspots, they discussed emerging problems, and they explained what they were doing to reduce crime in their precincts. Many policing experts credit CompStat with improving accountability and helping reduce crime. Over time, departments across the country adopted similar systems, but like many performance measurement systems, CompStat also raised an important question. When organizations measure success using numbers, does that create pressure to improve those numbers? What question has been debated for years, not just in policing, but in education, healthcare, business, and many other professions. Now let's look at allegations versus evidence. And over the years, several current and former NYPD officers publicly alleged that they experienced pressure related to crime reporting. Some claim supervisors encourage the reclassification of certain crimes into less serious offenses. And others allege there was pressure to scrutinize reports before they were entered into the system. These allegations received national media attention and prompted calls for independent review. But it's essential to understand something that is fundamental to every criminal investigation. An allegation is not the same, of course, as evidence. Allegations are claims that require investigation, and investigators must review documents, interview witnesses, examine policies, and determine whether the available evidence supports those claims. That's why responsible reporting requires us to separate the allegations from documented findings. Throughout this episode, that's exactly what we're doing. Looking at both sides, supporters of the NYPD point to New York City's dramatic decline in many major crime categories over several decades. They argue that CompStat improved accountability, allowed police departments to respond more quickly to emerging crime patterns, and made policing more effective. Critics, however, argue that any performance system based heavily on statistics should be carefully monitored to ensure that data remain accurate and consistently reported. Both perspectives raise important questions, and that's exactly why independent oversight exists. Rather than relying on opinions or headlines, oversight agencies review evidence, evaluate policies, and issue recommendations based on their findings. So, what did those independent reviews actually conclude? Did investigators find widespread manipulation? Did they identify isolated problems? Or was the answer somewhere in between? And that's where we're headed next. So, I'm going to wrap this episode up with examining the independent oversight agencies and what they found, what they recommended, and what conclusions we can reasonably draw from the evidence. And we'll also answer the question we started with. Can New York City crime statistics be trusted? So looking at how crime statistics are created, why questions were raised, and what independent reviews examined, what can we reasonably conclude? Independent oversight reviews did identify opportunities to strengthen crime reporting practices. And among the recommendations were improved supervision, more consistent documentation, and stronger auditing procedures, and continued oversight. Those recommendations are common whenever large organizations are reviewed. Hospitals, schools, government agencies, and private businesses all undergo audits designed to identify weaknesses and improve performance. Finding opportunities for improvement does not automatically mean the entire system is unreliable. At the same time, the questions raised over the years remind us why independent oversight is so important. Public confidence grows when agencies are transparent, accountable, and willing to improve their processes. And I will say on a personal point, I believe that many of our jurisdictions across the country need better oversight, more independent reviews, but they have to be willing to invite that in. And I know that that's not always happening. But I am reporting exactly what has been alleged and what we can prove at this point. Now, the crime statistics are one piece of the puzzle. Perhaps the biggest lesson from today's episode is this. Crime statistics are one important tool, but they're only one tool. Professional criminologists rarely rely on a single set of numbers when evaluating crime. They compare official police reports with victimization surveys, emergency call data, court records, hospital trauma information, and other independent sources. Each source has strengths. Each source has limitations. And when several sources point in the same direction, we can have greater confidence in those conclusions. When they don't, that's often a signal to ask more questions and not to jump to conclusions. Now, here's my final thoughts, and then on the next episode. Today, we've examined New York City, and we've looked at how crime statistics are created and why questions have been raised over the years and what independent reviews have found. Next, we're going to travel to another major American city and ask the same question. Can we trust Chicago's crime statistics? We'll examine how Chicago reports crime, the challenges unique to that city, and what oversight agencies have found, and what the available evidence tells us. Because no matter which city we're discussing, the goal remains the same: to separate the facts from the opinions and evidence from allegations and data from assumptions. I'm Kim, and thank you for joining me on CompStat Daily. Until next time, stay informed, stay aware, and stay safe. And I'll see you in the next one.